Taf Nun Ches Amud Beis will begin Nun Ches Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. We learned previously that if he came to a valley and he can't span the valley, the distance between the two sides is more than 50 amas, he can't span it by taking a rope that can cross it. So in that case, where he can't span it, then we say that he has to measure, and he measures the slope, but he measures it by being kiter, by piercings. And we have the kula on how he measures the slope and how he measures the slope and the descent and the ascent of the slope. So now the Gemara is saying that that we require him to measure the slope, where he can't be mavliya, and he has to measure the slope, but it's qualified. We only said that he has to measure the slope when they have a plumb line, a line that the surveyors use, or when builders use to make straight lines. So you have a plumb line. If he goes over the edge of the cliff and he has the plumb line that comes down, if the plumb line is not so steep, so we said that when the plumb line does not go straight down, it's not so straight. So now when the plumb line goes down, if there's a slope, if it slopes gradually, when you put the line down, it'll bang against the slope. And if it slopes there, then the plumb line will extend out and come down. If it's a straight line, the plumb line goes straight down. It goes straight down. But if there's a slope, then it can't go straight down. When you put the line down, it bangs against the wall, the edge of the slope, and it extends further. If it is a gradual, if it's an incline and the plumb line extends out, that's when we say the slope of the valley is considered accessible, and therefore you have to measure it. And you measure it by the way of being kiter, of piercing. So that's when we say, the Gemara will tell us the dimensions of how much of a slope that we're considering. But we only have to measure by being kiter and measure the slope if it slopes out. If it's steep and it comes straight down, and the plumb line goes straight down, the sides of the valley are not accessible, and therefore you don't have to measure them. So it's only when the plumb line does not go straight down. But if it goes straight down, then you don't measure the sides of the valley. You don't measure the sides, they're not accessible. You measure the floor, you measure the floor of the valley, you measure it straightly and properly, but you don't measure the walls of the valley. Now coming to a different point of what is the depth of the valley when we say that you can be mavliya, when you can span it. So we're going back to now the case of being mavliya, of spanning it. How deep is it that we say that you can span it? Rav Yosef Alpine. Rav Yosef says 2,000 amas. But if it is more than 2,000 amas, then you can't be mavliya, even if the rope would cross over. But since you have a depth of more than 2,000 amas, it's considered a makam bifnei atzmai, and you can't be mavliya. There you have to be measured, and you have to therefore measure it and be kiter. It says, when are you mavliya? If it is a width of 5, but only a depth of 100, not 2,000, only 100. And if not, you can't be mavliya. More answers, he learns like a cher. The sanya that they learn, the cher say clearly that even if it has a depth of 2,000, you can still be mavliya. You can still span it. Some say the following: they have a different version where he says even more than 2,000. Come on. Well, this doesn't come out according to either of them. The like Tana comes, the like Acherim. They say even either 100 or maximum 2,000, but not more than 2,000. So who is Rav Yosef going like? More answers, Halsam. Over there, the Brisa, the two opinions, 100 or 2,000 is dealing in a valley, where the plumb line does not go straight down. So meaning that it slopes, where the walls of the valley slope. That's why you have that limitation. But here, Rav Yosef is talking in a case where the walls of the valley go straight down. They're steep, they go straight down. And therefore, since basically it's inaccessible because the sides are steep, it goes very steep down. Therefore, we allow spanning it, we allow it to be mavliya, even if the depth is more than 2,000. So we said that if it goes straight down, if it's very steep and it's vertical and it goes straight down, then we said in that case you don't measure the walls, you just measure the floor. If it's gradual, if it slopes, if the chut hamishkoil, the plumb line, does not go straight down, and there's a slope and it would knock against the walls and it would extend further out, that's considered to be that it's gradual. And over there you measure by piercing, by being kinder. What's the distance of how far out? What's steep and what's gradual? How far out does the plumb line extend, so that we should say it's not considered to be steep and you have to measure it. Amar Avimi Dalit. He said Dalit Amos Chein Tani Rami Bayecheskel Dalit. It's Dalit Amos. Higi Lahara Mavliya V'Chayzel Midos. If he comes to a mountain, if he can span the mountain with the rope of the 50, then he doesn't measure the area, he doesn't measure the ascent and the descent, the heights and the slopes. He just crosses over with the rope of 50. He doesn't have to measure it. That's only if it is steep enough to be considered a mound or a mountain. That's only, therefore, if it's mislakes yud, that it rises 10 tvachim on a distance of dalet ames. So as it travels dalet ames, it already rises 10 tvachim or more. Then it's considered to be a mountain. It's not considered to be flat land, and therefore you don't have to measure the slope. You can be mavliya and just cross over. But if it only rises 10 tvachim on a distance of 5 amos or more, then that's considered to be just a slope, just to be the contours of the land. It's not considered to be a mound, and therefore then he has to measure the slope. Where do we say he has to span, where he's allowed to span it? That's when it's considered to be not the land itself, not the flat land, it's considered to be a mountain. And therefore the slopes of it are not considered to be the use of it. People don't use the slopes of the mountain. But even if it slopes gently, but if it's a gentle slope, that's just considered to be the contours of the land, and that's where people walk and use, and therefore he has to measure the slopes in that case. Rav Huna Breder V'Nasan Masa L'Kula. He learned it L'Kula. Omer Rava Lo Yishana. We only said this. Alabar Hamislaket Asar Mitzei Chamish. That's where do we say when he spans it, he's mavliya. That is when it's rises 10 on a width or a length of 5. But if it's steep, and that even within a distance of 4 amos, it already rises 10 tfachim, then he doesn't have to measure it. He doesn't have to. He just estimates it. He estimates the width, and he doesn't even have to span the mountain. He just estimates it. If it's something that's so steep, then you don't even have to measure. You just estimate it. I mean, it's not considered something that's for the use of of people. They don't walk there. It's too steep. It's not considered part of the area that they walk. So he learns it l'kula. He learns that when do we say that you're mavliya? When we say that you're mavli, you span it. That's when that's a kula. But there's even a bigger kula. We only require even to span it where it's a gentle slope, where it rises 10 tvachim when along a distance of 5 amas. But if it would be within 4 amas, that's considered very steep, and therefore it's not considered usable. You don't even have to be mavliya. You just estimate it. And you can continue on. You estimate the width of it, and you continue on. But he can't go outside the tchum. So we learned before that if there is a valley or a mountain, if the rope of 50, one person holding it here and the other here, can cross over that area, the valley or the mountain, you span it. You don't have to measure the slopes. Now, however, this is too wide. If it's too wide and you can't span it, then you have to measure it. However, if it's too wide in one area, it narrows in another area, we allow you to go to the narrow part, span over it, come back, and then continue. So even if it's too wide where you're measuring opposite the city, but if it narrows, and then you can now cross over on the narrow part, you can cross over the narrow part, come back and continue. However, but so long as the narrow part is not outside the tchum, so long as it's not outside the alpine mama of the tchum. My time of Gemara, what's the reason? Amar of Kahana, we're afraid people will say, Midas tchumim boilakan. We're afraid people will say, well, if the surveyors are measuring you're spanning over here, they'll think that this must be within the tchum, and they'll come and walk in this area over here, not realizing that this is only where the surveyors are measuring, but it's not really within the tchum. So therefore, we don't allow you to span it outside the tchum. If you can't be mavliya, so over here, this is where we said that you're kaider, you pierce the mountains. You measure the slopes, but you measure it in a way of being kaider. So how are you kaider? Tan Rabbanan, Ketzan Mekadrim, how are you Mekadrim? How are you kaider? Tachta and Keneged Liba. The lower one has the rope by his chest, and the Alyan Keneged Meraglaisov, and the one on top has it by his feet. The one lower down has it by his chest. So therefore, you're not measuring all of the slope. He has it by his feet. The one that's higher up has it by his feet. The one that's lower down has it by his chest. And therefore, now you're not having to measure all this area. You don't have to measure this area, and you have it now measure this way. So therefore, you save in the measurements of the slope. You're not measuring the entire area of the slope, so it saves some of that area and allows you therefore to measure, to go further in a straight line. Omar Rabbi Nekatina, we have a Messiah in Mekadram B'Chever Arba Ames. The rope that you use for Mekadram, as opposed to the rope that you use in the regular surveying to measure the Pai Mama, which is 50 amas, over here by the Mekadrim, it's a rope of 4 amas. That's the length of the rope that you use to be Mekadrim. We do not allow this Mekadrim, this piercing, this method of measuring the slopes by one person holding it by the foot, the other person by his chest. We don't allow this, loy be'egel harufa, not in the measuring of the egel harufa. If they found a corpse lying outside, lying in the wilderness, they measure to the city that's closest to the corpse. They have to bring, and that city has to bring an egel harufa. With measuring of egel harufa, you're not makader. You don't measure in this manner. V'loy bari miklat, and not by near miklat. When a person kills b'shaygeg, he has to go to near miklat. The city is measured, the outskirts of the city, the tchum of the city is also kailat. It's also considered to be within the city. When you measure the tchum by near miklat, you're not mekader. It may change hel Torah. Those are the rice. those measurements are deraisa. So we don't allow these types of leniencies. Tchum is a derabanan. By tchumim we allow it.